Thanks for your patience. It's a real pleasure as someone that grew up on so many of these award-winning artist projects. We're about to see a sizzle reel for these Tony, Grammy, and Oscar-winning entertainers. You're about to see. Let's roll the footage. The award-winning stage actor, multi-Emmy nominated star of 4 DC projects, from Batman and Robin rating aside. He had a lot of fun. Smallville, Lionel Luthor. Batman, the animated series, The Riddler, Mr. John Glover. When he's not by a piano, coming up with a wonderful tune for Jim Henson or the Carpenters, Elvis, Three Dog Night, Daft Punk. You can see him as the villainous swan, the villainous penguin, or the guy that's just going to put 500 on the bandit. Ladies and gentlemen, Oscar and Grammy winner Paul Williams, come on to the stage.
Hi, everybody.
So, John, this is your birthday month.
Yes, it is. I am a Leo. Leos, any Leos in the house? Okay, well, pussy, pussy.
We just turned 80. Congratulations.
80. Oh, yeah, I turned 80. It's harder to learn lines that when you're 80 than it was when you're 22 or something. That's all. Go about your business.
So you both, at this stage of your careers, and you continue to work, it's a beautiful thing to have 40 or 50 plus years in the business across all these mediums. What do you feel stands out about your career? I mean, obviously Batman it's a huge thing at these conventions. You have delivered the iconic versions of these characters. People across the world say that they're hearing your voice if they look at comic books, that you are the mental interpretation when they're flipping through the pages, whether it's a Batman the Animated Series comic or any Batman comic dating back to the 60s. So that's really impressive, and I just think so much of that was the collaborative environment with Andrea Romano and the group record. Can you guys talk a bit about walking into that experience and sort of seeing what it was like, I guess, in the radio play days of the old 30s, sort of that was their process?
Yeah, everybody was there at once. A lot of times when you're doing these things, you just go in by yourself and do like 10 versions of the same line, but we were all there doing a little play. So that's why that's so good, I think. But I thought it was like a Saturday morning cartoon show. So I was just having fun with it, being the Riddler, thinking I was talking to kids. But then I realized when I started doing the cons how much it meant to so many families growing up with that series on. I thought, well, the Riddler thinks that everybody's a little kid. So it was just right for the Riddler. Just looks down on people and thinks he's the smartest person in the world and he knows all the answers.
And you're sporting the cool Riddler shirt that we found in Buffalo. So we've got, this is, we're fully represented here.
Thank you. My partner's not here today, so we did it in line. It was really fun, but she's not here now. God, tell her. Okay, go on.
And I'm curious, Paul, what your experience was like coming in with the group record. And John always had a solo episode where it was usually Kevin and Lauren both. It would always be a Batman and Robin episode, but you would have a lot of solo Batman and then also team-ups with Richard Mole and Mark Hamill.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, I think the thing that's most important in the entire thing is that a lot of people don't know and or forget that when we do this for a living, it doesn't mean we have to give up our fan card. And never gave up my fan card. I walked onto the, into the sessions to record, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, and looking at the talent around me, and I get excited about that. I'd show up for Hollywood Squares. Peter Marshall just died. Oh God, love it. You'd go to do Hollywood Squares, and the first thing I would do is run in and look at the squares, look at the set, and read the names and go, who is going to be up there that I've never met before? And he'd walk in and he'd go, Vincent Price. Holy cow, my God, I love Vincent Price. Or just right down the list. Anybody from Burt Reynolds to whoever was there. I think part of the joy in this deal, and we have, we also do a bunch of these. I just started doing them this year and all. And incidentally, if you're coming to see me, all the money, everything that I raise goes to recovery and or arts education. I'm 34 years sober, and it's before 34 years ago, there's a lot of Maybe-ville. Somebody say, hey, have you ever performed in Tampa? And I'll go, maybe. Maybe, But throughout the years, and I started at first as an actor in my early 20s and couldn't really make a living at it, and started, knowing my life is a gift. When I don't get something that I think I really want, I get something that I really, really need. And something that I really love doing. So for all these years, the best part of this deal for me is I get to hear the stories. And when somebody comes up and says, my mom was a single mom and You and Me Against the World was an important song for us, or somebody says, my little girl is learning to play Rainbow Connection on the piano, that's a heart payment for me. And I really love being here, and I appreciate your advocacy through the years. It's made for a great life. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you talk about those intersections of actors that you admire and the opportunities to work together, it's funny because Roddy McDowall and John were very good friends for years, and you knew Roddy from War of the Planet of the Apes, and he was one of the most impressive Mad Hatter incarnations in the Batman universe, brought from Alice in Wonderland, but he delivered such a great performance. But as John said, you're not going to show up at dinner and say, I just recorded this great Batman cartoon. But if it had ever come up, you would all three have known, like, oh, wow, we all are involved in this thing. Right. Which brings me to this sort of amazing journey you had with Kevin Conroy from the Shakespeare at the Globe. Sure.
When he got out of school, he came down to the Globe, and we did a season of Shakespeare. I mean, it was his first professional job. So I'd known Kevin for years and years before he came, and I walked in and saw what he could do with that voice of his. It was just breathtaking. He's one of the sweetest men in the world. Yeah. Guy died much too soon. She should be around still forever, but he will be.
He will always be remembered as the Batman. Yep. 30 years doing the voice.
Exactly.
It is impressive when you saw him on stage, and then when he went to that place with the character. Yep. It was stunning. Paul, what do you remember about working with Kevin and then Andrea's direction? Because she was the one that found him after over 500 people read for Batman. Yeah. Before he got it.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea. First of all, Andrea was amazing, and I'm somebody that absolutely, I love, a lot of actors don't give me a line reading. I am, in fact, a professional actor, and I speak from my heart. When I speak from my heart, and, oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with thee. Oh, hi, John. But you know what? I was somebody like, what do you tell me what's going on here? Because a lot of times, you're looking at the script right as you're getting ready to record. Things have changed and whatever. And I loved being told what to do. I still love being told what to do. It takes all the mystery out of it, and I have less chances of hurting myself. It's like, do it like this, and I would, and especially if it's like, what's going on? You've just fallen off a building. What do you sound like? And she would throw out a bunch of stuff. I knew Burgess Meredith. I was friends with Buzz, and so when you talk about the Penguin, for me to walk in and start doing the voice, of course I've got in my head, I've got that nya nya nya, the Buzz sounds, which were iconic, and it's so solid. But then I read the scripts. And the scripts that we were given there was a depth and I mean, you know, there was a sadness about Cobblepot, and I found myself, you know, just finding a lot of, you know, you kind of match up things in your own past that match in a moment with a character, and you find something that begins to really speak to you in a very real way. And I think about this character in his childhood and what he looks like and how much smaller he is than the rest of the world. And all of a sudden, you flying rodent, you begin to get the pain behind the anger. And, you know, I think there's a direct line between the wound and the weapon. It's like that evil that would rise out of him was born in the horror of his childhood pain. And that was the gift of playing this role, finding a story that, you know, that in a sense, when you really begin to look at those elements in a character and what you're doing, and many times I think for us as actors, certainly for me, certainly for somebody that came from a kind of a broken background, I find healing. And I think it's one of the reasons that, you know, the people come up and talk to us about Batman. I think that there's the adventure and there's the entertainment and the loving of the characters, especially Batman. But I think there's a connection to the darkness of it and the brokenness in it. And I find that the Batman fans sometimes are incredibly, they're very feeling. They're very open emotionally, and I love that. I love finding that in anybody.
Well, that's so wise, because there was an amazing episode with Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy where they team up and she basically breaks up with the Joker, but she wants to go back. And it was the first time in any cartoon they depicted a toxic relationship with an abusive male in that series. And with the episode Birds of the Feather, I'm giving you guys homework on all these name drops. But with Birds of a Feather, the Penguin's released from jail and he comes home and expects to see Two-Face or Joker, but Batman's there, and he says, I'm going to keep an eye on you. And Penguin tries to go straight and make aristocratic friends, and he finds out that he's the butt of the joke, and the pain all comes back. And they did show that fractured nature. And Riddler's Reform, the third episode John got to record, the Riddler goes straight, and he's getting toy licensing for all his creativity. But part of him just can't stop being a criminal. He's addicted to trying to beat Batman. And it was such a complex writing staff that really showed, like you say, it's the adventure and fun, but these characters had these flaws and these beautiful things you could exploit in the narrative. So how about a round of applause for everybody on that staff? Now, another overlap with these two gentlemen, which was included in this very long title for the panel, was from Gremlins to Muppets to Batman. John, you were choked and then you shredded a gremlin.
I know. I had green gook all over me. Yeah, it was great, though.
Can you talk about the puppeteers with the microphone and kind of how you guys worked?
Well, you know, during rehearsal and everything, it took, about 10, it seems, people to do the stuff with the eyes and the noses and the stuff. And so we'd play around at rehearsal and everything, and then we'd shoot a bit, and then they'd die. They all went like that, all the puppets. And I remember it was the people had to take a break, the puppeteers. But I thought, oh my God, they're all dead now, and that's because they were exhausted by the time they were playing with me for rehearsal. So, but it was amazing to watch them work all those things together. I mean, they were so talented, those people, amazing.
But you've also worked with CGI and having, Shazam, the ghouls and the goblins. It's much better, I think, and I think cinema goers, that's why they like what Tom Cruise is doing. I think people really want to see real practical effects, practical puppeteering. I think audiences are leaning back into that because it's more of an artistry. And I think that's something that those movies hold up with, is because you have puppeteers actually controlling that, and the human element is what we love in cinema,
yeah,
right. I think.
Yeah.
And Paul, you've worked with so many Muppets.
I did, for me, it's family. I have, felt in my DNA. It's just, I went over to do the first season of the Muppets, and I met Jim Henson. And the way that it felt, I was never a kid that belonged to a gang that had a treehouse. I always wanted to belong to a gang that had a treehouse. I met Jim Henson and the Muppeteers, and I had a gang that had a treehouse. It felt like the best sandbox I ever played in my life. I walked on the set, and if Dave Goltz is there holding Gonzo, and Frank Oz is there holding Piggy, there are 1, 2, 3, there are 5 of us in the conversation. And Gonzo is as sweet and as loving and as tender and kind as any creature I've ever met in my life. Piggy says things to me that I could not repeat on this stage. It's just hilarious. And I had been a fan of the Muppets long before I knew they were Muppets. I mean, I'm talking about Jim back to the Ed Sullivan Show and Slinkies and Mana Mana and all. But for some reason we really connected. And he told me he was going to do a 1-hour thing for HBO called Emma Daughter's Jugman Christmas. And thank you. And he gave me the script, and he said, "I'd love for you to think about writing the songs for this." And I loved the story. It was a beautiful story. I was, ran off and did it with my own band, and I wrote the songs and recorded them, and I think it was my audition for the Muppet movie. I always thought that Joe Raposa was going to wind up writing the songs for the Muppet movie, and I'm not sure why he wasn't asked to, because I thought it was brilliant. He wrote "It's Not Easy Being Green," but when I was asked to write the songs for the Muppet movie, although I'd written Emma Daughter alone, I said I want to bring in I'd just written most of the songs for A Star Is Born with Streisand, with a guy named Kenny Asher. I wrote Evergreen with Barbara, but most of the songs I wrote with Kenny Asher. Wonderful composer and a big sentimentalist just like me. And I talked to Jim and I said, "Can I bring Kenny in to work on music with me?" And he said, "Yeah." And it was the absolute right combination. And writing the songs for that movie, and then later on, after Jim passed, the Muppet Christmas Carol and Letters to Santa and a couple other things. It's been a lifelong relationship, and it's just been the best. And I think that the reason that Rainbow Connection is alive today is because I think there's probably the spirit of Jim Henson in that song as much as anything I've ever written. And absolute honor to have anything to do with all of those people. They're wonderful.
Isn't he amazing, this guy? I feel so lucky to know him now.
Well, he loves you, and he's a big fan.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, shut up. Just shut up.
I want to touch on 2 fantastic villainous performances. John, I want to first start with you. We just got to see on your Instagram, we found the video of Ebert and Roper bragging about you as an up-and-coming actor that steals the show from Roy Scheider in 52 Pickup, which meant a lot to you. Your dad, you told him at Towson State Teachers College, "Dad, I'm going to go act." And then to have that moment when you tell him about this big film and he goes, "I've read that book." Yeah. That's got to be...
Elmore Leonard, he said. Elmore Leonard. I had no idea it was a book. So I went and read it about 20 times, and I just had a ball being that nasty man. I used my Baltimore accent for him. So he sounded stupid, but he was so clever. So fucking clever. Yeah. There are no 5 years older in the audience, are there? Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
But also, like, you would create scenes. You killed John Travolta's wife, Kelly Preston, and that scene wasn't working. So you and
Frankenheimer. Yeah, John Frankenheimer. He directed it.
Great.
Yeah, we sat in my little thing. I said, "This doesn't make any sense." And so the 2 of us just sat and sort of talked it through. And then we went out and shot it. And my mind then was young, so I could remember it all. And we just had a blast. It was the 2 of us just fixed it.
And it was very creepy, and there was tension building as you're running the camcorder, and then she gets shot. It was incredibly dark. Well done, yeah. So
I think I'll watch that movie again. I don't know. I was pretty good in it, wasn't I?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And I have touched every part of Anne Margaret there is to touch, almost. No, she was a doll. She came up to me, we had a reading of it, and after the reading she said, John, you know, I'm not a trained actor, and I don't really know how, so could you just stay in character all the time whenever I'm around? And I thought, oh crap, I wanted to get friends with Anne Margaret, but now I gotta be some baddie. So there was a scene where I shot her full of something and put her in the trunk of my car and drove her off, and she said, she walked into the room where I was waiting for to do a scene, and she said, have you shot anything yet? And I said, I don't take drugs, lady. I just give drugs. She said, no. I said, have you shot any scenes yet, John? So I just made a fool of myself, you know, right in front of Anne Margaret. Oh, that's not an applaudable event.
Paul, when you're coming up with Swan and you're acting with, you know, the incredible costumes and the helmets and this sort of, you know, you see a film like The Phantom of the Paradise, you see a film like Star Wars. They're so bold, and every actor that's ever worked on something like that, they're just like, we are really on a road, we're going at a high speed and we don't know where this thing's going to land. What's it like in that sort of a creative?
Well, it was interesting because Brian De Palma came over to A&M Records, where I was a contract writer, and at the time in 1974 is when it came out, so probably in 1973, I was, from about 1970 on, I was known as a writer. I mean, I started writing in like 1967, for about 3 years, I wrote a lot of album cuts, a lot of B-sides. Never heard anything of mine on the radio. I was like, am I ever going to hear anything on the radio? In the meantime, I'm making a really good living writing songs for everybody, essentially. But then I started on a nice run with the Carpenters. We've only just begun, Rainy Days and Mondays, I Won't Last a Day Without You, Let Me Be the One, the Three Dog Night, Old-Fashioned Love Song, Out in the Country, Family of Man. And when you look at that, none of that really sounds like anything which should make me qualified to write songs for Phantom of the Paradise. I think I was probably a really bad choice based on what I'd written before. But I'm an out-of-work actor, and so when Brian De Palma hired me to write the songs, I approached them for the characters like an actor. You know, what is this song? The other thing is it was a chance to satirize all these different kinds of music that I loved, but it wasn't famous for me. From like doo-wop for Goodbye Eddie Goodbye for God, what was the name of the group? I'm having a senior moment. Thank you, exactly. I have a great memory. I'd like you to meet her. Yeah, exactly. And but you know, again, I was working opening for Liza Minnelli up at Lake Tahoe at Harrah's, and so I'd do 2 shows a night, and then during the day I'd write the songs, and then go into the studio to record them and all. The project changed while we were working on it. How many of you are Phantom of the Paradise fans in the audience that actually know it? Nobody went to see it. Nobody went to see it, and the few people that did go to see it loved it. And they became fanatics about it and would capture their friends and make them watch it. And I cannot tell you how much all of you who did that have brought to my life, because amongst those people that loved it and that were shown to other people were people like Edgar Wright, you know, who put me in Baby Driver, or Daft Punk, who came to me, and I wind up writing Touch and Beyond for the album and singing Touch. We won the Grammy for Album of the Year in 2014.
It was amazing.
Album of the Year, Random Access Memories. At my age, I was 74 at the time. I'll be 84 in about 3 weeks. So it's like, you know.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Yeah.
When you write a song, do you write the lyrics first and then put it to a tune?
No. I write in 2 ways. I write words and music, or I write words to somebody else's music. I mean, You know, a lot of things I will write with somebody. I love sitting down and collaborating because songwriting can be
that
very
makes
long.
sense.
Yeah, it makes
Where you
great sense.
putting
But for example, the Muppet movie I wrote with Kenny Asher, we wrote all those songs together. We kind of write at the same time. He writes basically music, I write basically lyrics, but we go back and forth. But Muppet Christmas Carol I wrote alone. Emmett Otter, I wrote words and music. When I'm writing, whatever I'm writing, if right now I'm working on Pan's Labyrinth with Guillermo del Toro for the stage, and what comes first is the story and the characters, and the songs need to, you know, most pop songwriters that write for a show will try to write a hit song. I don't try to write a hit song. I try to write a song that does one of two things. Either advances the story,
Right.
or gives us some sense of the inner life of the character. You know, that's sitting down to write this song for Kermit at the opening of the Muppet movie. Kenny and I are like, we're thinking about When You Wish Upon a Star as the ultimate from Pinocchio. That's just absolutely as good as a song in that kind of a story can be. But Kenny and I are sitting there and we're going, wait a minute, Jim, what is Kermit doing at the swamp when we discover him? And he thought a second and he went, playing a banjo. I went, okay, that tells you a lot. Okay, he's sitting in the middle of the swamp. What do we have to work with? We have water and light. Water and light, and and the refracted, you get rainbows. As soon as you do that, you have something that is mystical to include in the whole story. Kenny and I wrote ourselves into the worst corner. Think about this. This is the opening song to the Muppet movie. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions. Rainbows have nothing to hide. Oh shit. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. We just wrote ourselves into the worst corner. I mean, we just denied anything, and rainbows have nothing to hide. And then there was a gift in that. And again and again and again in the creative process, our unconscious or the muse or whatever manages to put us in a place where there's a gift. What's the gift? So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know the wrong way to see. The great thing that happens there is Kermit goes from being the teacher, the mentor, the guy standing up at the podium, you know, he goes to becomes a member of the audience and has a shared experience with the audience. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know the wrong way to see. Someday we'll find it. The rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. It left him as a part of not with the answers, but with holy questions. And I think that's one of the reasons that the song really works, is because it remains a question for each of us to individually answer, you know. And I don't know if that's what you asked me or not, but that's what I answered.
Wonderful. I would just love to touch on Roddy McDowall, working with him on The War of the Planet of the Apes, putting on all that makeup, getting into character. And then, John, I would just love to hear about the man that you knew, Roddy, as your friend, and just all the work that he'd done that you really were inspired by.
Yeah. Roddy?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a mini-series with Lee Remick. And I went to dinner at her house, and Roddy McDowall was there, and we both had partners that were younger, a lot younger than us. So I think we bonded that way. So it made him comfortable. So we just and he had dinner parties that you could not believe. You never knew who was going to be there. You'd come, and there'd be Elizabeth Taylor. There'd be Betty Davis. I lit Betty Davis's cigarette once.
What a dump.
Yes, what a dumping it is. All right.
And Paul, you guys were suited up pretty deep, right?
Oh, well, I mean, every morning at like 4 o'clock in the morning, get picked up, taken to go into the makeup trailer and lie there. And Roddy always listened to classical music. So we're getting, the appliance work is done. It takes 3 hours. Then you have a bite to eat, and then they put the jaw on. When the jaw is on, because the face is all the way out to here, the production sounds like this, So you wind up, and for most of the time, you never use production sound. You have to loop it all and all, but which has nothing to do with the story. But I loved Roddy, and one of my favorite films when I was a young guy was How Green Was My Valley. And how green is my valley? He plays this little boy, and his brothers are older brothers, and they're working in the mines, and they want a union. And there's a great scene that I carried with me my whole life, where he's at the dinner table, and Donald Crisp is the father, and the boys are talking about unions, and he says, "There'll be no talk of unions in this house, my boys." And they go, "Then, Father, we have to leave." And they get up and they leave. So it's just Donald Crisp sitting at the head of the table. And at the other end of the table, all by himself, is little Roddy. He was about 9 or maybe 8. And he sits there and he goes, Donald Crisp, without looking up, goes, "Yes, my son, I know you're there." And it's one of the most touching moments. And I said to Roddy, "Roddy, there's therapy in that, because what I found is what I was looking for my whole life was for my dad to respond, 'Yes, my son, I know you're there.'" He said, "Well, that's where we shot. That was the village in Wales, was over there on that hill. We were shooting at a place called the Fox Ranch in Malibu, Atlanta. It's just getting daylight." And he's going, that's where the mine was, whatever. And it was like sitting with not only Hollywood history, but also with just a really kind guide through that. And I have to tell you one really quick story. I was crazy, and I was very attached to other crazy people. I was an out-of-control cocaine addict. Vodka and cocaine were what I lived on until I was about 49. And I became friends with Peter Lawford. Peter Lawford had an interesting life as well. So Peter and I were out, I think we ran into each other at the Rainbow Bar and Grill or whatever, and was doing something. And if you see Paul Williams Still Alive, I think I tell a story about us being high on Mike Douglas, and there's a scene from us. We look like parrots. We're like, "Oh, we're so happy. We're just fried and all." But I was friends with Peter. We were out late at night, and he said, "Well, Elizabeth is on." I said, "Elizabeth who?" And he said, "Elizabeth Taylor. You know Elizabeth?" I said, "I do not." He said, "Oh my God, that we have to fix that right away." So he grabs me, and she had rented a little house just out by City National Bank at the end of Sunset. She was getting ready to go to Russia to do a picture. And so we go over, and it's like probably 11, I don't know how late it was, but I guarantee it was not a 7 o'clock call, "Can we come over?" We just showed up. So he goes up, he says, "Ring the bell." I ring the bell, and he's standing behind me. She opens up the door, and standing directly behind her is Roddy McDowall, who just shoves Elizabeth. I didn't shove her, but he goes racing by her, grabs me, picks me up, and swings me around, hugging me. So I'm meeting, and then I'm standing there with Peter Lawford, myself, and Roddy McDowall, meeting Elizabeth Taylor. These are her two best friends. I am immediately safe. I am not a bad guy if I know these two guys. But I loved old Hollywood. I lived between Jonathan Winters and Robert Mitchum in Montecito. I was the normal guy on the block. It was just a crazy guy and another crazy guy. It was fantastic. I love my life. I'm grateful for every breath at this point.
John, could you figure out anything Robert Mitchum was saying in Scrooged? I think you were saying he was hard to understand in some of those scenes.
Well, he mumbled a lot. I was so excited to meet him because he had a home on the Eastern Shore where I grew up. But I said that, and I got back from, I was, yes, But that's when he did his drugs. And then he was growing marijuana, so he got in trouble for that with the government. Yeah.
He was on a chain gang.
Yeah. So I couldn't.
But what an amazing experience, Bill Murray. And who was your friend that was in When a Stranger Calls? Lovely actress.
Say that again.
When a Stranger Calls. She was the horror film, the calls coming from inside the house. What's the actress's name?
Carol Kane.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was on Scrooged as well. That was a great cast.
She was. She hit him. But there was a thing where she does the thing like this, and I came on the set to talk, and she said, "I hurt Bill." I said, "What happened?" She said, "I went to do that, and it really clipped him." So I think Bill was mad at her that day. People think Bill Murray, they say, "What was Bill Murray like?" And I said, he was wonderful to me. He was so generous, but he's got this bad reputation with some people that's like, I don't know what. But I loved working with him. I mean, he just let me humiliate him so much. I mean, he just allowed it to be. You know, he wasn't saying, "Don't touch me," or "You shouldn't do that. Would you not do that, John?" He didn't do none of that. He just let me humiliate him.
Bryce Cummings, one of the great villains of Christmas. And then, of course, Muppet Christmas Carol. Those were some amazing songs. And that was the first writing session after you got sober, or around then?
That was the first. Talk about timing. I'm going through a spiritual awakening. I'm grateful for the first time in my life. I feel safe, and I found my tribe, and it's amazing. And I'm asking the phone, incidentally, is not ringing. I mean, the 80s, I was gone. I had a great career in the 70s. It began to kind of dwindle for drugs and booze in the 80s. The 80s, you know you're an alcoholic when you misplace a decade. And so I misplaced a decade. The 80s were the Ishtar years. I wrote the songs for Ishtar, so, which incidentally I'm very proud of. But I got sober, and I loved it. I mean, and people would say, "Are you writing?" I'd say, "You know what? Not right now. If I fall in love with it again or get the opportunity, whatever, I will." But right now, I went to UCLA. I got my certification as a drug and alcohol counselor, and I was working for the Musicians Assistance Program at that point. And then the phone rang. Thank you very much. But the phone rang, and it was Brian. It was Brian Henson, and he said, "We're doing Christmas Carol as the Muppet Christmas Carol. Would you come and work on it?" And to talk about the universe lining something up for you that is just beyond a gift. I am at this point in my life experiencing a spiritual awakening, where I feel a connectedness to the world around me that I've never felt before. I had a connection with the world through my songs, but I'm talking about the guy sitting next to me. I'm talking about feeling like I belong to a community and really. So I'm at this place in my life in the middle of a spiritual awakening when I'm asked to write the songs for a story about a guy who's having a spiritual awakening, and is great. By the end of it, is a thankful heart, is grateful for everything. It's like I'm writing about a much wealthier version of my own life, with Scrooge and all. And it was just and the way that I wrote was just unconscious. I looked at the script of what I needed to write. Okay, here's the first song, and the first song is, you see a door open, and you see Scrooge's feet, and he's walking along. And as he goes by in the mud and the snow, and as he's walking along, he goes by these little characters that seem to get colder. So I sat down and went out to a little park. I took a little tape recorder. I started reading a Lawrence Block novel, with the comment before I opened the book, "Let me know, what the first song needs to be about, guys up there, whoever you are. Let me know when you've got an idea." And I literally started reading this crime novel. And about 3 pages into it, I put the book down, I picked up the recorder, and I went, okay. We see his feet. He's walking through the mud. When a cold wind blows, it chills you to the bone. But there's nothing in nature that freezes your heart like years of being alone. Oh, it's not bad. It paints you with indifference like a lady paints with rouge, and the worst of the worst, the most hated and cursed, is the one that we call Scrooge. Oh, there goes Mr. Humbug, there goes Mr. Grimm. If they gave a prize for being mean, the winner would be him. It poured out of me a minute. Thank God I had a tape recorder, because I couldn't have written it down that fast and remember it. But that's the way writing became for me once I put the ego out of the equation and started realizing that as what the Native Americans call a good hollow bone, if I can get Paulie out of the way and let the voice of the character that I'm writing for come through, it's a much, much easier job. And I believe that that's a creative ability that each and every one of us has. That you have there's an amazing writer named Emmett Fox who talked about the fact that what we dwell on, we create. That what you manifest, if you sit around going, I'm not going to get that job, why should I try to be an actor? It's so hard these days. That's like a prayer. But if you go, you know what? Somebody tucked some talent in my chest, and I know it's not there for me to suffer. It's there for me to make something of my life. If you grab a hold of that thought to whatever you're trying to do in your life, I promise you, you will be shocked at what you're able to do.
That's wonderful. Yes. We are so lucky to have these two gentlemen here, and we are really lucky right now for one of the members of our audience. They say there's only two things that are certain in life, death and taxes, but the third thing is Batman. If it's a Lego Batman, if it's an animated Batman, if it's a film Batman, it's going to make money, and the recipient of that is 99.5% Warner Brothers. But it touches actors like John and Paul, obviously Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, the list goes on. It took over 10 years for anybody to ever believe that Batman might be valuable as a cinematic property following the TV show. The man that invested every year in the red, further in the red, further in the red, taking more pitches, trying to get that done. He's credited on every feature Batman film as the franchise originator and executive producer, and he is doing a play on his life of getting Batman made and having the respect for the character that he so deserves. I last saw him in the kitchen of John Glover mid-pandemic, and it's been that many years, but please welcome to the stage Mr. Michael Uslan.
Woo, Michael!
Come on up.
Sit down, sir.
Michael, it's so good to see you.
Michael.
We'll all stand for a moment. Please tell everybody about what's going on in Tampa and how good it feels to be amongst your collaborators.
Thank you so much. Riddler, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Paul, it's a pleasure.
Evidently you're worthy, huh? I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for the opportunity. I just have to invite you all to something very special. Starting October 1st till November 10th at the Straz Center for the Performing Arts at the Jabe Theater, we are putting on a brand new play. It's the world premiere based on my memoir that's kind of the story Byron just said. It's called The Boy Who Loved Batman. And I am thrilled. We just announced it 1 hour ago that playing me is going to be one of my favorites, Dan Fogler. From Walking Dead, the Harry Potter sequels, Fantastic Beasts. He played Francis Ford Coppola in The Offer. He is, oh, yeah, of course, Balls of Fury, right? If you are a fan of theater, if you are a fan of comics, if you are a fan of superheroes or a fan of Batman, I just invite you to join us. I think you will really get a kick out of it. It is very funny, and it's very touching. Hopefully you will laugh and you will cry. And it's the Straz Center starting October 1st. So please join us there.
Thank you for your hard work getting Batman on the screen, in our homes, the VCR, to the DVD, to the Blu-ray. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Uslan, John Glover, Paul Williams, my dear friends.